Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking you somewhere maybe unexpected, Florence. You know, the heart of the Renaissance, city of art, Dante, civilization itself.
Beautiful place.
Yeah.
But beneath that beauty, something truly dark unfolded.
Exactly. Between 1974 and 1985, this incredible city was stalked by a brutal serial killer. He became known as the Monster of Florence.
Yeah, and this isn't just, another true crime story. What we're drawing on here is really 2 decades worth of material. Official reports, deep dive investigations, conflicting theories, all the drama that followed.
It's a lot.
It is. It's really an immersion into how one killer didn't just take lives, but seemed to, break the system's ability to find the truth.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to basically cut through all that complexity. We'll unpack the awful facts of the murders themselves. We'll look at the 2 big official investigations, the Sardinian angle, then the Pacciani theory.
Where's Farmer?
And then we get into the really strange stuff. The political fallout, the later investigations that actually ended up targeting journalists and writers as suspects.
It's kind of mind-boggling, the scale of it. You've got 7 couples murdered, so 14 victims.
14 people.
And the investigation, at one point, they looked into something like 100,000 men.
100,000.
Yeah. And just countless lives ruined by, false leads, rumors, accusations. It dragged on for so long.
And the name, the Monster of Florence, they came from someone specific, didn't it?
It did. Mario Spezi, he was this legendary crime reporter for La Nazione, kind of became obsessed with the case. He actually coined the term monstrologer for someone like him studying the monster.
A monstrologer. Okay. So let's start there. The initial shock. Florence, city of light, suddenly facing this darkness.
Okay, so to really get the impact, you have to understand the killer's method, the MO, because it was disturbingly consistent. For 11 years, 74 to 85,
Right.
7 couples, always ambushed while they were making love in parked cars, usually out in the hills around Florence, quiet spots.
And often on dark nights, right? No moon.
Yeah, exactly. Weekend nights, typically dark moon phases. And the thing tying them all together forensically was unmistakable.
The gun.
The gun, a .22 caliber pistol. It fired Winchester Series H rounds.
Which I gather were pretty common bullets in Italy.
They were, yeah. So the bullet itself wasn't unique, but the market left. That was the key. The firing pin left this tiny, unique impression on the rim of the shell casing.
Like a fingerprint for the gun.
Pretty much.
Oh.
And that same exact mark showed up on shells from the 74 killings right through to the last ones in 85.
So they knew, okay, this is one person or at least one weapon operating this whole time.
Exactly. Over a decade. But then there was the other signature, the really horrifying part, the mutilation.
Right. After the victims were dead.
Yes. The killer would excise the female victim's sexual organs, sometimes also a breast, like with Nadine Morio in the 85 Scopetti killing. Her left breast was taken.
And the way it was done, the sources mention the precision, don't they? It wasn't frenzy.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
That's
right.
chilling. The medical examiner, Dr. Mori, he was very clear on this. He said the tool wasn't just some rough knife.
Can you describe it as?
Extremely sharp, possibly a scuba knife. And he even noted that the marks suggested the blade might have had a small notch or tooth.
Wow.
And he documented these 3 clean cuts. Clockwise, counterclockwise, then a final cut to detach it. It suggests something calculated, clinical almost, not random slashing.
This level of detail is just, it's hard to comprehend.
It is. And this is really where Mario Spezi, the journalist we mentioned, comes into the story in a big way.
The monstrologer.
Yeah. Veteran crime reporter for La Nazione. The kind of guy you picture, trench coat, maybe a fedora. Cynical, but driven.
Old school.
Totally. And he was actually at the scene of the 1981 murders, Carmela D'Annunzio and Giovanni Foggi, Via dell'Arigo.
So he saw it firsthand.
He did. And initially, faced with that horror, his first thought about the missing tissue.
Yeah.
He thought maybe animals did it after the killer left.
A way to make sense of it, I guess. To
Yeah.
rationalize the unthinkable.
Yeah, a natural reaction.
Yeah.
The chief inspector there, Cimino, he shut that down fast.
What did he say?
Spezi quoted him directly. It's brutal. Cimino apparently said, "Animal's my ass. The killer did that. He cut out her vagina and took it away."
Oh my God.
Yeah. And Spezi said, in that moment, he understood. This wasn't just murder. The killer was taking trophies. It was something else entirely. Monstrous.
And you have to understand the fear this generated in Florence. It wasn't just crime stats going up. It hit a cultural nerve.
Absolutely, because, in Italy back then, young couples often lived with their parents until marriage.
Right.
And so privacy was scarce. Sesso and a kind of sex in the car it was, like a national pastime. The book actually jokes that maybe a third of Florentines were conceived in cars.
Weird.
Well, it illustrates the point. It was incredibly common. And suddenly, that private safe space out in the hills, it becomes a death trap.
So people stopped going.
Completely. The countryside around Florence emptied out at night. Young couples, they started retreating into the city center, looking for dark streets, but, crowded ones, near places like the Basilica of San Miniato al Monte, hoping being visible, even in the dark, offered some safety.
Just imagine that shift. The terror.
Yeah. And this climate, this feeling that the police were lost, it just fueled Spezi's reporting. He wasn't just covering the story. He was investigating, theorizing. He became the monstrologer.
And he had ways of getting information the authorities didn't want out.
Oh, yeah. He was clever. The Italian system is very tight-lipped during investigations. So Spezi had tricks.
Like what?
Well, he cultivated sources everywhere. His best one was someone inside the tribunal, the courthouse, who kept logs of everyone officially placed under investigation, the Indagato list.
So he could see who the police were actually looking at, not just who they were talking about publicly.
Exactly. He realized those logs were the real paper trail. Other reporters missed it.
Smart.
And he'd bluff prosecutors. He'd call them up, pretend he already knew something, a witness name, a forensic detail he'd guessed at.
And just gauge their reaction.
Yeah. The hesitation, the too quick denial. He could often confirm things just by how they reacted, how they tried to control the narrative.
Yeah.
Made him very effective.
But probably not very popular with the authorities.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Which becomes important later. But, the sources also show this took a huge personal toll on Spezi.
All that darkness year after year.
Exactly. Seeing the crime scenes, the photos, the city's trauma, it apparently got to him. He actually sought counseling.
From who?
A Franciscan monk who was also a psychoanalyst. Brother Galileo Bibini.
A monk and a psychoanalyst. Wow.
Yeah. Spezi was wrestling with these huge questions,
Yeah.
Good, evil, the unanswerable and excruciating questions the monster case brought up. It shows this wasn't just a crime story. It was pulling people, the whole society, into something really dark psychologically.
Okay, so the killings continue, the fear grows. Then in 1982, there's a major breakthrough, right? Or at least what seemed like one. An anonymous tip.
Yeah, a game changer. Someone sent a newspaper clipping to the Carabinieri, the military police. The clipping basically said, hey, maybe you should look at an old case.
An older case.
Much older. A double murder from 1968. Barbara Lacci and her lover, also killed in a car while together.
1968. So years before the 74 killing everyone thought was the first one.
Exactly. And here's the incredible part, just bureaucratic luck, really. The shell casings from that 68 crime scene hadn't been destroyed.
Wow.
So they tested them, and the ballistics matched perfectly. Same unique firing pin mark as all the monster killings from 74 onwards.
So the monster, or at least the gun, had been active since 68. That changes everything.
Completely. Adds another layer of mystery. But there was a complication.
Which was?
The 1968 case was officially closed. Solved. Barbara Lacci's husband, Stefano Melli, he confessed. Said he killed them out of jealousy.
Okay, so case closed.
Well, Melli served time, a reduced sentence. But the investigators looking at it again in the 80s, especially a magistrate named Mario Rotella, they weren't buying it.
Why not?
Melli was Sardinian. And Rotella thought Melli was, frankly, a bit of a simpleton. Easily manipulated, he suspected Melli hadn't acted alone, that he took the fall for others.
Like a clan thing from the Sardinian community.
Exactly. Rotella suspected a clan killing, maybe driven by omertà, that code of silence. It's a key cultural point here.
Explain that a bit more, the Sardinian context in Tuscany.
Sure. So a lot of Sardinians had migrated to Tuscany for work. They brought with them this strong cultural code, sometimes called ballantia. It involves honor, masculinity, and often settling disputes outside the official Italian legal system.
So infidelity wasn't just personal.
It could be seen as an attack on the whole family's honor, something requiring a strong, maybe violent response.
Okay, so Rotella thinks Melli took the fall. Who did he think really did it?
The focus shifted fast to another Sardinian man, Salvatore Vinci. He was Melli's lodger back in '68. And crucially, he was also Barbara Lacci's lover.
Ah, complicated.
Very. And Vinci was the opposite of Melli, described as smart, strong, maybe even sexually predatory. Sources say he had no bounds, even forced his own wife into orgies, using her like a queen bee to attract others.
Good Lord.
So the theory became Vinci was the real killer in '68. Maybe his honor was slighted by Lacci's betrayal, and Melli was just the patsy.
And the gun, how does that fit in? If Vinci did it, where did the gun go for 6 years?
This is where Spezi's theory, which Rotella apparently agreed with, comes in. They believe Vinci orchestrated the whole thing. They thought Vinci made Mele fire one last shot into Bartolacci's already dead body just to get Mele's fingerprints, his gunpowder residue, on the scene, contaminate him.
So Mele confesses, Vinci walks away.
And takes the gun with him, hides it, along with those specific Winchester H bullets. And then, 6 years later, according to the theory, the gun emerged from its hiding place and the monster killings began.
That's elaborate, but it connects the dots.
It does. And Rotella went all in. He officially named Salvatore Vinci as a suspect, gave him the aviso di garanzia for all the monster killings from 68 right through 85. 16 murders.
Did they arrest him?
Vinci was actually already in prison awaiting trial for something else, the alleged murder of his first wife back in 1961, which had been made to look like a gas suicide.
Wow, this guy.
Yeah. And the fact that the monster killings stopped while Vinci was locked up, that seemed to confirm Rotella's suspicions. He thought he had his man.
But obviously it wasn't that simple because the investigation moved on again.
Right. The Sardinian trail, focusing on Salvatore Vinci, it eventually fizzled out. He was acquitted of his first wife's murder, and the monster case remained open. The gun was still missing.
Okay, wait. If the focus on Salvatore Vinci collapsed, why did Spezi, years later, start looking at Vinci's son, Antonio? That seems like a big jump.
It was. And the catalyst seems to have been the FBI profile they commissioned much later.
What did the profile say?
It painted a picture of the monster as likely being a lone individual, white male, probably sexually inadequate, and filled with rage towards women.
Okay.
And Spezi realized that profile did not fit Salvatore Vinci. Salvatore was described as hypersexual, dominant, a veritable Priapus, according to one source.
Not inadequate.
Not at all. But his son, Antonio, he might fit.
Who was Antonio again?
He was the baby. Salvatore had supposedly rescued from that gas suicide attempt by his mother, Barbarina, back in Sardinia. He apparently grew up hating his father. Spezi thought maybe the trauma had warped him.
So Spezi tracked him down.
Yeah, interviewed him. Believed Antonio, damaged by his upbringing, was a much better fit for the FBI profile than his father.
And did anything come of that interview?
Something potentially huge.
Yeah.
Antonio was talking about his terrible relationship with his father, Salvatore. And apparently, completely unprompted, he mentioned a time he'd threatened his father.
With what?
With a scuba knife.
No way. The same type of weapon the ME suspected back in the 80s.
The exact same type. Extremely sharp, maybe with a notch. Antonio just volunteering that detail. I mean, it's either a massive coincidence or
the missing piece.
It could have been. It just shows you the insane complexity here. One gun links crimes, 20 years apart, tied up in Sardinian honor codes, family hatred, migration. Rotella was obsessed with the clan. Maybe just the wrong Vinci.
Okay, so the Sardinian trail goes cold. Despite that late focus on the sun, the gun's still missing, the killings have stopped, but there's no closure. Where does the investigation go next?
It pivots dramatically. We enter what becomes the dominant official narrative for years, especially in the mid-90s, the Pacciani trail.
Pietro Pacciani, farmer.
Yeah, an unpleasant, solitary guy. Lived out near Scopetti, where the last murders happened in '85. So proximity was a factor.
But there was more, right? He had a history.
We did, a very relevant history. Back in 1951, he'd been convicted of murdering his fiance's lover. Caught them in a parked car near Vicchio.
And Vicchio was another place the monster killed later on.
Exactly. So the head of the Special Anti-Monster Squad, Chief Inspector Ruggero Perugini, he latched on to Pacciani. Hard.
What was the actual evidence linking Pacciani to the monster crimes, though? Not just the old conviction.
Well, this is where it gets interpretive. Perugini's case wasn't really built on forensics tying Pacciani to the monster's gun.
Yeah.
It was more circumstantial and heavily psychological.
Like what?
Perugini obsessed over that 1951 murder. He claimed Pacciani flew into a rage because his girlfriend had bared her left breast to the other man.
Okay.
And Perugini used that to explain why the monster cut off Nadine Morio's left breast in 1985, 34 years later. He saw it as this deep-seated psychological echo.
That feels like a stretch. Is there a simpler explanation for the left breast?
There is, yeah. Basic anatomy and logistics. If you're a right-handed killer approaching the passenger side of a car, the victim's left breast is simply the easiest one to grab and cut.
Simpler, less narrative-driven.
Exactly. But Perugini and the prosecution seemed to prefer the complex psychological story.
What else did they have on Pacciani? I remember something about a painting.
Oh, yes. The painting. Found during a search of Pacciani's house, it became huge.
Describe it.
It was bizarre. depicted this sort of mythical creature, like a centaur, but with both male and female organs. Very disturbing. There was a skull-headed general figure, too.
Okay.
But the clincher for the prosecution was in the foreground. There were 7 small wooden crosses planted in the dirt.
7 crosses?
7 double homicides. The prosecution presented this as basically a coded confession drawn by Pacciani himself.
Wow. Symbolic, to say the least.
Highly symbolic. And then came what they called the crown jewel of the physical evidence.
The bullet.
The bullet. During one search of Pacciani's property, they claimed they found a single, unfired Winchester H-series bullet, the monster's type, just lying in his vegetable garden.
In the garden, just there.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
This was presented as the smoking gun, linking the monster's ammo directly to Pacciani.
Okay, so a violent past, proximity, a weird painting, and a bullet. Seems like a case.
It seemed like one, and Pacciani was eventually convicted, though later acquitted on appeal before dying. But the sources we're looking at highlight huge problems with the Pacciani theory, starting with the physical impossibility.
What do you mean?
Pacciani himself. He wasn't exactly an agile predator. He was short, maybe 5'3", overweight. He had scoliosis, a bad heart, severe emphysema.
Not exactly leaping through the woods.
Right. So how did he manage the 1983 killing? The killer shot through a car window that was nearly 6 feet off the ground. How does a short, unwell man do that?
Good point.
And even more starkly, the 1985 Scopetti killing. The killer was disturbed by the male victim, Jean-Michel Kravachvili. Kravachvili was young, fit, an amateur champion runner.
And the killer got away.
He did. The idea that Pacciani, in his condition, could outrun a terrified 25-year-old athlete across rough terrain at night,
Yeah.
it just defies logic.
So the physical profile doesn't match the crimes. What about the witnesses?
That's another huge problem. The case relied heavily on these secret witnesses. Many turned out to be deeply unreliable.
Like who?
The most famous were Giancarlo Lati, known as Katanga, and another man, Fernando Pucci, called Alpha, who had intellectual disabilities. Lati eventually confessed to helping Pacciani.
He confessed?
Yeah, claimed he and others were Pacciani's accomplices, and Lati coined that infamous phrase,
Compagni di merende.
compagni di merende. Picnicking friends. It stuck. Became part of the Italian language, meaning, seemingly harmless people hiding dark secrets.
So Lottie's confession sealed it.
It led to convictions for him and another alleged accomplice, Mario Vanni. But their stories were often contradictory and didn't always match the crime scene evidence.
Okay, hang on. Compagni di merende. It sounds almost folksy.
Yeah.
Darkly funny. But if the evidence against Pacciani himself was shaky and the witnesses unreliable, why did this theory stick for so long? Was it just desperation for an answer?
Partly that, yes. After the Sardinian trail failed, the state needed someone. They needed to show they were closing the case, restore public confidence. But the foundation, that bullet in the garden, it seems it was rotten from the start.
How so?
This is where Mario Spezi comes back in. He was convinced Pacciani was just a nasty piece of work, but not the honster. He dug into that bullet discovery.
Using his journalistic skills again.
Yes, including a hidden camera interview with a key figure, Arturo Minoliti. He was a Carabinieri marshal who was part of the search team when the bullet was supposedly found.
And what did Minoliti say on this hidden camera?
It's damning. Minoliti explained that all major police operations were supposed to be joint efforts, Carabinieri and state police working together.
Okay.
But he confirmed that on the day the bullet was found, he, from the Carabinieri, was mysteriously not called to be present. Only the state police were there.
That sounds suspicious.
Very. Spezi pushed him, asked him directly, given all the pressure and contradictions, did he believe the bullet was planted? Minoliti, clearly troubled, basically admitted it. He said, and this is a quote from the source, "In the light of reason, yes, I must say it was planted."
Wow, he admitted it was planted.
He essentially did. He felt he'd been forced to back up the official story by his superiors to save his own career. It suggests the crown jewel of the Pacciani case was likely fake to make the narrative fit.
Okay, so Pacciani is convicted, then acquitted on appeal, then dies before a final verdict. The star evidence, the bullet, looks planted. Where could the investigation possibly go from here?
Into territory that seems almost unbelievable, but makes a kind of sense if you understand a particular Italian cultural phenomenon.
Which is?
Dietrologia.
Dietrologia. Okay, explain that.
Well, Count Niccolo Capone, a Florentine nobleman, explained it to Douglas Preston, the American writer who got involved. It literally means something like the study of what's behind. the backstory.
So not taking things at face value.
Not just that, it's a deep-seated belief that the obvious explanation is never the real truth. There must be something hidden, a conspiracy, powerful forces pulling the strings behind the scenes.
And this is common in Italy.
Apparently very ingrained, often tied to distrust of elites, the wealthy, the powerful. After decades of political scandals, the years of lead with terrorism.
Yeah.
There's this pervasive skepticism. The idea that a simple lone killer like Pacciani could be responsible for something so terrifying just didn't sit right with this mindset.
So people automatically look for Freemasons and secret societies.
Pretty much. It makes the leap to grand conspiracy almost logical within that cultural framework. And that's exactly what happened next in the Monster investigation.
Who led this new phase?
A new team, principally Chief Inspector Michele Gittari and a public minister named Giuliano Mignini. They basically threw out both the Sardinian theory and the Pacciani as lone killer idea.
For what?
For a massive conspiracy. They proposed the existence of the Order of the Red Rose.
The Order of the Red Rose? Sounds dramatic.
It was. They claimed it was a satanic sect made up of, guess who? Wealthy professionals, doctors, lawyers, maybe Freemasons?
The elites.
Of course. And what was their supposed motive for the monster killings? Ritual sacrifice. Specifically, they theorized the sect needed deaths that occurred during orgasm, mors iusti, they called it,
Right.
to release powerful energies needed for their satanic rituals. Gittari even wrote a book about it, linking it all to Aleister Crowley and fringe Masonic groups.
Okay, this sounds wild. What evidence did they possibly have for this?
This is where it gets really shaky. They relied on incredibly unreliable witnesses, like an alcoholic prostitute named Girabelli, who was known for making things up, who suddenly claimed Pacciani and his picnicking friends held black masses and did unspeakable things.
So, questionable testimony. What about physical evidence? Did they find altars or robes or anything?
No. Instead, they went back to old crime scene photos and reports and started reinterpreting mundane objects through an occult lens.
Like the painting.
Even weirder. They focus on a simple granite doorstop found near the 1981 crime scene. Just a doorstop.
And what did they say it was?
Gittari declared it was, and I quote, a truncated pyramid with an hexagonal base that served as a bridge between this world and hell.
A doorstop is a bridge to hell. Are you serious?
That's what the sources report he claimed. He also looked at photos of, like, scattered stones or berries near the bodies and interpreted them as ritual symbols used by the sect to choose and kill the couples.
This sounds less like police work and more like something out of a novel. Did Mignini, the prosecutor, actually buy this?
Within the logic of Ditrilogia, maybe it seemed plausible. If you start from the assumption that there must be a hidden meaning, you can find it anywhere, I suppose.
Okay, so this sect theory, did it stay focused on Florence?
No, it spread. It metastasized, really.
Yeah.
They connected it to another case entirely over in the city of Perugia, the death of Dr. Francesco Narducci.
Who was he?
A young, wealthy doctor, a professor. He was found drowned in Lake Trasimeno back in 1985, not long after the last monster killing at Scopetti.
Drowned, suicide, accident.
Initially ruled a suicide, but Gittari and Mignini reopened it years later as a murder.
Part of the sect conspiracy?
Exactly. Their theory was Narducci was a key member of the Order of the Red Rose. His job. He was supposedly the custodian of the trophies, the organs the killer took, the fetishes, as they called them, needed for the rituals.
So Narducci held the evidence.
According to them. And they theorized that after the last killing in 85, Narducci became unstable, a weak link. So the sect leaders had him killed to silence him and protect the conspiracy.
The complexity is just staggering. Did they find anything when they reopened the Narducci case?
They exhumed his body in 2002, and immediately there was something strange. The body was apparently too well preserved for someone supposedly in the lake for 5 days back in 85.
Okay, that is weird. So maybe it wasn't Narducci. Or he wasn't in the lake that long. Simple explanations, right?
But not for Gittari and Mignini. They rejected simple. Their Ditrilogia kicked in.
What did they think?
They theorized that the powerful sect, knowing the body was about to be exhumed, must have somehow switched the well-preserved body back in just before the police got there.
Switched it back in. What?
To deliberately confuse the investigation. The fact the body was too recognizable became proof of a conspiracy manipulating the evidence.
My head hurts. It seems like any evidence, no matter what it was, could be twisted to fit the conspiracy theory.
Pretty much. Once you go down that rabbit hole, everything confirms the belief. But then, actual science threw a massive wrench into the works. Real, objective science.
So leading back to the Pacciani convictions.
Exactly. Specifically, the convictions of the picnicking friends, Lottie and Vonnie, which were based on their testimony placing Pacciani at the Scopetti scene on Sunday night.
Right. So what was the science?
It came from Spezi, again, now working with Douglas Preston. They thought, let's get away from testimony and symbols, let's look at hard facts. They hired a forensic entomologist, Professor Francesco Narducci. Bugs, specifically flies. Introna examined the original police crime scene photos from the 1985 Scopetti killing.
What was he looking for?
Fly larvae. Maggots. Forensic entomology is amazing. It uses the predictable life cycles of insects that colonize dead bodies.
How quickly they arrive, how fast the larvae grow.
Exactly. Based on the type of flies present and the developmental stage, the size of the larva visible in those photos from 1985.
Yes.
Introna could determine the time of death with remarkable accuracy. And he concluded, definitively, the French tourist Scopetti must have been killed on Saturday night, September 7th.
Saturday night. But wait, the whole official case, the Compagnie di Merende testimony from Lottie and Nessie, that put the killings on Sunday night, September 8th, didn't it?
Precisely. Introna's flies proved the official timeline was wrong, scientifically impossible.
Which means
the eyewitness testimony that convicted Lottie and Vonnie, the entire basis for closing that part of the case, was completely discredited.
Yeah.
And crucially, Pacciani himself had a solid alibi for Saturday night.
So the science blew up the official narrative. Okay, so let's get this straight. The state, led by Giuttari and Maghini, is fully invested in this massive satanic sect conspiracy.
Right, the Order of the Red Rose.
Meanwhile, Spezi and Preston have scientific proof, the insect evidence, that completely undermines the convictions based on the picnicking friends timeline.
And they also have the FBI profile, pointing towards a lone, inadequate killer, which makes Antonio Vinci look more plausible than his father or a whole sect.
So you'd think the investigators would say, wow, thanks for this new evidence, let's re-examine things.
You would think.
Yeah.
But that is absolutely not what happened. Instead, the investigators turned on the journalists.
Turned on Spezi and Preston. Why?
Because Spezi and Preston, following the Vinci lead in the FBI profile, got a tip. A potentially huge tip.
What was it?
About a possible saint house on a big estate called Villa Bibbiani. The informant claimed there was an old armoire there containing 6 locked metal boxes.
6 boxes?
Yeah. And the speculation was, maybe they held the murder weapon, and maybe the trophies. 6 boxes. There were 6 female victims who were mutilated post-1968. 1 box per victim.
My God, that's potentially the answer. The physical evidence everyone was looking for.
It felt like it. So Spezi, hoping this would finally break the case open and force the authorities to drop the sect nonsense, he did what he thought was right. He anonymously reported the tip to Magnini's office.
He told the prosecutor about the potential location of the gun and trophies.
Yes. And that, it turns out, was a catastrophic mistake.
Why? Didn't they investigate the tip?
No. Instead, Giuttari and Magnini viewed the tip itself through their conspiracy lens, their detralogia.
How did they interpret it?
They decided Spezi and Preston weren't trying to help, they were trying to interfere. To undermine the investigation through the medium of television, as one document apparently put it. They thought the journalists were planting false leads to distract from the real culprits, the satanic elites.
So, reporting a lead about the actual murder weapon was seen as obstruction.
Worse than obstruction. It was seen as part of the conspiracy itself, and the retaliation was immediate and brutal.
What did they do?
First, 2004, they searched Spezi's house. And get this, remember that granite doorstop Giuttari called the Bridge to Hell?
The truncated pyramid, yeah.
They seized it from Spezi's house during the search. And then they tried to use it as evidence against Spezi, implying he had some connection to the crime scenes because he possessed this satanic object.
That is insane. They're using their own bizarre theory artifact against the journalist reporting on them.
Exactly. It was purely punitive. Then, February 2006, they go after the American, Douglas Preston.
The writer.
Yeah. He's called in for questioning in Perugia. Magnini grills him. Why were you guys worried about phone taps? Why did you go poke around Villa Bibbiani?
And the result?
Preston, an internationally known author, is officially indicted, made an indagato and official suspect for hindering the investigation and making false statements. It caused huge headlines back in the U.S. and U.K.
Yeah.
Trapped in his own thriller, that kind of thing.
Using in the legal system to intimidate the press?
Absolutely. But the worst was saved for Spezi, April 2006. Right before his own book detailing his investigation was about to be published.
They arrested him.
The initial charge was obstruction of justice. But then came the really outrageous one, accessory to the murder of Dr. Narducci.
Accessory to the murder of the supposed trophy custodian for the satanic sect.
Yes. The logic spelled out in the arrest warrant was that Spezi's entire effort to investigate the Sardinian connection, particularly Antonio Vinci, was just a deliberate attempt to force the reopening of the Sardinian investigation and divert attention from the real sect culprits that Mighini and Giuttari are pursuing.
So his journalism, his attempt to find the truth based on evidence like the FBI profile, was literally framed as a criminal act of conspiracy.
That's precisely it. And his treatment after arrest was harsh. Denied a lawyer initially, held in solitary confinement for 5 days, like he was a mafia boss.
The irony, didn't they capture a major mafia boss around the same time?
They did. Bernardo Provenzano caught just 4 days before Spezi's arrest. And here they are, treating this elderly journalist with the same, or maybe even more, severity. The message couldn't be clearer. Challenge our narrative, and you'll be treated like organized crime.
Did Spezi stay in jail?
No, thankfully. He was released unconditionally after a habeas corpus review. The higher court basically found the charges baseless. But how he got there involved one last bizarre twist.
What was that?
While fighting the charges, Spezi publicly pointed something out. He highlighted how eerily similar Mignini's accusations against him were, the claims Spezi was part of the conspiracy, etc., to the wild claims being made online by a fringe conspiracy theorist named Gabriella Carlizzi.
Who was she?
Just someone with a website who had previously accused Spezi himself of being the Monster of Florence.
So Spezi was saying?
He was implying very publicly that the public minister's office was getting its investigative leads and legal theories from the absolute fringes of internet paranoia. It basically exposed how completely Dietrologia had taken over the official investigation. Hashtag take it out, retro.
So, looking back at this whole saga, the Monster of Florence, it's more than just an unsolved serial killer case, isn't it?
Oh, much more. It's really the ultimate case study in how an investigation can just completely go off the rails.
You have two major official theories, the Sardinian clan, the farmer Pacciani.
Both incredibly detailed, pursued for years, and both ultimately collapsed. Undermined by contradictions, lack of solid proof, even planted evidence in Pacciani's case.
And then instead of going back to basics, they double down into
Dietrologia. This grand conspiracy of satanic elites, built on interpreting doorstops and relying on demonstrably unreliable witnesses.
Well, the actual physical evidence, the ballistics that consistently linked the gun for 17 years, the forensic entomology that destroyed the official timeline that was all just ignored,
twisted, or actively suppressed when it didn't fit the narrative the authorities wanted. It's quite shocking.
And the human cost. It wasn't just the 14 victims.
No. So many other lives damaged, careers ruined, people accused, their names dragged through the mud for years. You mentioned Whitney Rontini, the mother of one victim.
Yeah, the source mentioned she lost everything pursuing the truth. Her husband, her home, just tragic.
And that phrase, compagni di merende, picnicking friends, it became a permanent part of the language, a symbol of that hidden darkness behind supposed innocence.
And maybe most chillingly, journalists, Spezi and Preston ended up facing criminal charges just for doing their jobs, for presenting conflicting evidence, for pursuing leads that contradicted the official story.
It shows what can happen when state power gets tangled up with, personal ambition, cultural paranoia like Dietrologia, and this absolute need to control a story no matter the cost to truth.
The killer was never caught, but the case itself seems to have corrupted the system trying to solve it.
Absolutely. Which leaves you with this profound sense of not closure, but sorrow. It brings me back to what Brother Galileo, Spezi's counselor, apparently reflected on.
The monk psychoanalyst, what did he say?
He suggested that maybe all this madness, this endless complexity and contradiction, maybe it wasn't just noise, maybe it was in itself a kind of message.
A message.
Yeah, like an unending scream of pain and need into the absolute silence and indifference of society. As if the failure to find a simple truth was itself speaking volumes.
So without that willingness to just look at the simple, objective facts, the ballistics, the bugs, the real evidence, and ignore the noise,
the monster stays hidden. The case never really ends. It just leaves behind this wilderness of theories, confusion, fear, a story without an ending.
And maybe that's the final, most terrifying legacy of the Monster of Florence. Not just the murders, but the darkness that swallowed the search for truth itself.